Okay, here we go. Hi there. It's Monday morning, September, holy crap, 23rd. And I'm Rob, the developer dad, and we're building an application using dotNet and Blazor to help me when I'm running my D&D games. Um, First feature that I'm doing that I'm going to launch with when it's ready is just a simple NPC generator so that when my players ask me, what's the tavern keeper's name? Or, tell me more about the guy running the shop we're shopping at. I have answers for them instead of just naming everybody Bob. So last week was a little rough. I'm still recovering from COVID. I'm a whole lot better than I was this time last week. And on Friday, I only did a morning session because my cough really started to get the better of me. But I'm feeling a whole lot better today. And we got some resiliency working for the DB calls. We got the usage tracking plumbed out to the database and back again whenever a user does something that consumes one of the what I'm calling limited resources that this application makes available. And I think it's time to start giving the UI a little bit more love. There's some stuff in the UI that just doesn't look fantastic, and I want to fix that. So let's flip over to the screen share. Boop. You got to make the sound effects or it doesn't work. And just before the stream, I actually did a pull request for the resiliency stuff into the main branch. So I'm going to flip over there. And as soon as it's done, my Windows laptop shut itself off over the weekend. I think we had a power outage or something like that. And it decided to take a nap. So luckily, everything was up in the cloud on GitHub. So I didn't lose any work. So we're just going to fetch and pull. And I actually did delete this branch from the server earlier this morning. So we're going to get rid of that. And I'm going to start a new branch called feature / UX quality pass and create. Now, what are the objectives for this quality pass? I'm going to load up Notepad. UX quality pass. 1, get some kind of I'm working over here indicator. 2, clean up the nav bar. Logged in user is a crappy color and font. 3, start looking at enabling and disabling the different buttons on the different task panes when those buttons don't make sense, i.e. disable the save button when there are not any changes to save. All right, so these are the things I want to do in my quality pass. And I think we're going to start with this. Some kind of I'm working over here indicator. So how do we do that? I've looked at a number of Stack Overflow articles and questions and so on and so forth, and many of them recommend that we, excuse me, that we have some sort of wrapping component that handles showing and hiding different kinds of divs when long-running processes are happening. So layout, main menu, nav menu, all right. Pages, we've got component services, page models, partials. I've got my little app state provider down here, and I'm wondering if this should be what we have or where we put it. Part of me says yes, and another part of me says, maybe not. Because I don't want it to cover the entire screen. And right now, this app state provider, I believe, is wrapped around everything. Body. Yes, because I have it injected out here around the routes. So I don't want to alter that. I think where I want this app state thing to live is wrap it around this body thing, the feature host. Now, will doing this mess with the CSS and all of that stuff? I'm wondering if I should make the loading component wrap all of this stuff. And I feel like the answer to that is yes. So we've got component services, page event sync, page state changed event, and I think what I'm going to do is, let's add a razor component here. Yeah. And let's say content loading component. Yeah. Okay. Content loading component. We're going to do that, and we're going to have, I think we'll just do everything in the code block here. Yeah, for now. And I want to do public bool is working. Get set. And I do want to take a look at how I'm doing cascading parameters out here. Cascading value equals this. Okay. Yeah. So I'm going to pop this into a vertical document group here. Yeah. Get lost. So let's do this. Cascading value. Oh, stop it. Cascading value. Value equals this. Name equals loading overlay. Gotta spell it right. Okay, so we'll do that. And we'll go at child content. Okay. Yeah, I believe we've got to add a parameter render fragment child content. So we'll pop out here. Whoops. You know, one of these days, parameter public render fragment nullable child content get set good. Excuse me. And protected override task. Get current user. Yeah. Set user limits. I don't need any of that because those are just properties. And let's see here. We're gonna need public string. And it is going to be, I'm going to call it caption. Get set. And public async task set loading state. Bool state string. Caption equals string dot empty. No. Equals loading dot. And is working equals state. Caption equals caption. State has changed. And I don't think this needs to be an async task. Yeah, it really doesn't. Public void set loading state. And caption, we can make it not nullable because we've got a default on there. Set loading state. Okay, now child content. Before we go any further, let's wrap all of this stuff around my create npc.razor. Now, I didn't put this in the partials namespace because it's sort of like it's more a component service than anything else. So content loading component. All right. I do need a using on this. So let's at using game tools dot blazor client dot components dot component services. What are you complaining about? You're full of it. Oh, components, not pages. Duh. There we go. All right. So let's wrap this whole shebang. Content loading component. Yeah, let's content loading component. Do that. Cut. And I'm going to put it in after main to leave the footer up. Now, I'm not... darn hotkeys. All right. I'm not going to add any more stuff to this until I've verified that this isn't going to blow up or wreck the CSS and the page structure and everything like that. So let's go ahead and run this, because this content loading component might trip up the CSS around page container, feature container, task container. Those layout classes that I worked so hard on about a month or so ago. So let's see what's happening here. And I'm going to sign in. And I'll sign in as me. All right. And NPCs. Okay, it doesn't look as though it's broken anything yet. And that's good. So that's going to take a minute because the database hasn't woken up yet. But we've got our content loading component, and that's wrapped around the entire feature for NPCs. So I need to see about how I am referencing the other cascading parameter thingy that I'm using. Create NPC page model, page event sync, uninitialized, blah, blah, blah. This is all that stuff. Parameters set async, get current user. And let's see here, NPC services, app context, okay. Cascading parameter, protected, content loading component. And loading overlay, get set. All right. Now, let's come down to current NPC selectable, user options, reroll clicked, start over clicked, AI details requested, we'll want it there. Save NPC, we will want it here. Show list. Show list click. Yeah. Page state event changed. Hide when page state. Generate get AI description. Save. Load. Okay. I need to bring this up into the NPC list component as well. Copy. And for that, we do need to go into the partials. Come in here. And I want to view the code. Here we go. And I've got that cascading parameter down here. So let's paste it here as well. Loading overlay. And let's go to execute filter. Go to definition. Current page state, get blah, blah, blah. And we are going to loading overlay dot set loading state true loading NPC list. And I do need to say if you're nullable, and then loading overlay, if not null, set loading state false. Now, let's come out to our loading component and say if if is working equals true. Div class equals now ID equals loading overlay and span at caption. save. And let's see what that does for us. It's probably going to be ugly, but if it does show and hide as I want it to, then I'll be able to then start styling and working on the way it behaves, and the way it not the way it behaves, but the way it displays when it's active. So let's hit NPCs. Okay, it doesn't look like it did anything for me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come out to NPC list Razor and drop a breakpoint here. Make sure it's actually calling into set loading state. And I do want to make this an async task, because what I'm going to do is do a task.delay 1, and we're going to await that. Now this is what I saw in the Stack Overflow article earlier, and let's see if I can actually. Yeah, I was browsing it on my phone, and yeah, here we go. So I'm going to bounce this over to my Mac here. Give me a second. So here we are. Accept all cookies. And my code for the spinner is shown below. Div class spinner if at loading spinner equals true, blah, 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 blah. It's roughly what I'm doing. And on the accepted answer, if is loading, we load up a couple of divs. At loaded, at code, parameter, editor required. Hey, what's up, Erkamus? So we do all of this stuff. We've got the render fragment loaded. I should probably do a required there. That's going okay. Friday, I only ended up doing one stream because I met my goal for the day, and then I got hit by this gnarly COVID recovery coughing fit like midstream, and it wiped me out. So I didn't stream Friday afternoon, but I rested up this weekend, played a boatload of Diablo 4, and I'm rested and relaxed, and ready to start taking on some of the more egregious UX stuff. I didn't completely lose my taste and smell. I can taste some things. I can still smell things, like my delicious, delicious coffee. And I can taste sweet and spicy and sour, but salty and savory are both really, really muted. And that sucks, man, because I love savory. Like, my wife smoked ribs on Friday for dinner, and she and our youngest thought they were delicious, and all I could taste was meat texture and smoke, and it was not enjoyable. So let's see here. I want to bring back Safari. It sucked. So here's all this stuff, and then in the page is loading true, blah, 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 blah. Okay. So I want to actually step through this set loading state stuff. And I think I'll put the task.delay here. Yeah. Oh, I actually managed to dodge it until last September. I avoided COVID through the whole shebang, and then last September was my 50th birthday, and my parents came down from Eastern Canada, and there was a guy on the airplane sitting in front of them, coughing and hacking and so on. And sure enough, a couple of days after they arrived here in North Carolina, my dad starts coughing and hacking. And we're sitting around. I'm thinking, yeah, it's fine. I'm vaccinated like several times over. I've installed all the virus updates to my immune system and everything. I'll be fine. And then sure enough, they flew out and I started coughing and hacking and all of that stuff. And yeah, I missed out on probably the better part of a week's worth of work because of it, and some other family things that were happening around the same time. And so yeah, I got COVID for my birthday in 2023, and then of course my wife went on a road trip with a friend of hers for her birthday, which is a few days before mine. She came back with COVID, and the day after my birthday last week, I tested. A few days after my birthday last week, I tested positive for COVID as well. So yeah, it seems to be my annual birthday gift. I'd much rather the AAA renewal, but yeah, it stinks. But I did get the new edition of the Player's Handbook for D&D. I'd been skeptical. I'd seen a lot of ew, no, Wizards isn't getting my money, and they had it out at my local gaming store, and they had one of the limited edition covers, and I was flipping through it, and I was like, you know what? They fixed the way the game rules are laid out. A big problem with D&D over the decades is the organization of the rules has been suboptimal. And with D&D 2024, or what I like to call it is 5.5, because it is a minor revision in terms of systems and everything like that. It's really just sort of tweaks and optional things that you can adapt. It's fully compatible with the hundreds or thousands of dollars in 5e materials that I've accumulated over the years. But the way the information is laid out is so much friendlier, especially for somebody who's a new player. I give it like a 4 out of 5. 4 out of 5 stars. And if I weren't conditioned by corporate America into saying nobody gets 5 out of 5 stars, I would give it 5 out of 5 stars for the new way the rules have been organized and presented. They brought in an information expert and really worked hard on how the game rules and the systems are presented, and that gets it. I give it full marks, and I was nervous about the new version, but yeah, the full AIDM idea. Was it you and me talking about this last week? But oh yeah, writing software, that book rec, yeah, that one gets a 5 out of 5. And the whole AIDM thing, I mean, for a pickup game or a one-off, where it's like, I really just want to play D&D and I don't have a regular group, or I'm a forever DM and I want to play for a couple hours kind of thing, I think an AIDM, if it's carefully constructed, would be great for one-offs, or like a short series of module plays or whatever. I think for a long-running campaign, it's not going to work real great. But I actually applied to Hasbro. Wizards of the Coast is looking for a development manager / architect for D&D Beyond, and talk about dream job. I don't expect to get through their applicant tracking system, but we shall see. Okay, loading overlay is null here. And why is that? Oh, it'd be awesome if I were to land the gig, but I'm not terribly optimistic that that's going to happen. Okay, I'm going to refresh. And is loading overlay still null? It is still null. So why is my cascading parameter? It is marked as that, right? On after render async. Loading overlay is null. So that's very, very, very odd. Is it null up here? Where can I... Let's drop a breakpoint here and continue. All right, let's refresh. Okay, here's this. On parameters set async. Loading overlay is null. That's very, very odd. App context isn't null. Oh, I think I know. Maybe. Copy. Let's come out to create npc.razor. Content loading component. Actually, I need to come out here. Paste. No. All right. Excuse me. Override. Uninitialized. Async. And let's just drop a breakpoint right here. Lowybook mentions a distinction between encapsulating behavior instead of functionality. Okay. So I actually attended the Architect's Master Class that is like a week-long version of sitting in a room with Lowy and a couple dozen developers, and he talks about don't code features, code capabilities, and those capabilities, classes, services, etc., aren't necessarily directly tied to domain. They're instead capabilities that a system needs, and then you compose those classes and services together, and features and functionality come from the integration of different behaviors. Does that clarify things a little bit? If not, I can show you an example in just a minute. I do want to figure out why this cascading parameter isn't initializing. But we can definitely talk more about that. Because that's a really important distinction that we need to be able to make. Okay, so parameters set async is firing here. And the loading overlay is null. Okay. Here's loading overlay. Uninitialized async. Continue. Loading overlay is null. Okay. So I sense that I have a misunderstanding of this component lifecycle. So I want when does a parameter get instantiated in the Blazor render pipeline? Cascading value component, cascading parameter attribute, render mode boundaries, yeah, blah, 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 public class Dalek, so on and so forth, UL Dalek, blah, 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 cascading parameter name equals, I bet that's it. Let's try adding that. Go to definition. Name equals loading overlay. Save. Grab this and NPC page model. No, yes. There we go. Save. Let's try it again. I wonder if that's what I did wrong. Sign in. Go to NPCs. We're in the NPC page model. Now let's see if we can find it. It's still null. Okay. Now it's initializing. And we have our overlay. Good. So now we can step in. Continue. We didn't really see anything. So I wonder if I can put my database back to sleep. Or debug, delete all breakpoints, yes. Drop this. And I'm gonna go ahead and reload the whole shebang. Makes me think of orchestrating low-layer functionalities together, but in my own experience, that's led to dependencies because the managers control access to the relevant functionality or data, so maybe I'm on the wrong track. I'm visualizing what you're saying, and I think you are on the right track. Now, the issue with trying to architect this way is that, okay, so is working as false. Is working is now true. Continue. And is working as false again. All right. So I think it might be working. Not sure. All right. So the issue with having the managers basically act as uh, the big flat green Lego sheet that you snap all the Legos on top of comes in with Microsoft's implementation of dependency injection. If we come out to Program CS and I come down to Create Services, I'm basically setting up the implementations that are injected into the managers all at the sort of root process host. And this is a suboptimal way of doing it. I'm not in love with it, but it's the cards we're dealt. I would much rather, in my dependency injection setup, instead of having the host process responsible for instantiating the actual services that are, or the implementations of the components or the component types that I need, I would much rather have the dependency injection system tell the managers the type to instantiate. So take a resource access component, for instance. I've got my NPC access, and all that's declared in here is an interface and some data exchange types or data transfer objects. And then I've got my SQL Server implementation, which implements that interface against SQL Server. Now, because of the way dependency injection is set up in ASP or ASP.NET Core, I have to create that instance, or I have to define how that instance gets created all the way out at the root of the process. And I would much rather have the managers be responsible for that. Now, I'm in a multi-manager scenario here where I've got a number of subsystems or use case providers, aka managers, composed together in the same application in this Blazor app. If I were to fracture each manager out into its own discrete service, this problem goes away a little bit, because at that point, the service host basically just manifests the manager into memory, and it matters a little bit less that all of the manager's dependencies are instantiated inside program CS. But in the past, with full .NET framework, without dependency injection, my manager constructors, and let's load up the townsfolk manager just for the sake of this discussion. So I'm injecting iRule set access, NPC access, card deck, and a dice bag. Now, in the past, I would have a default parameterless constructor for Townsfolk Manager that would, if any of these dependencies were, well, actually, what I do in the past is, and I'll do this and then I'll undo the change. So I'd set up constructor, right? And then I would call out. So I'd have a mgr dot let's say private static rule set access create default rule set. And then I do the same thing for all of the other dependencies. And that way, the manager is able to is able to create its own, or create the dependencies that it knows it needs to create. Now, another way of performing this, or getting this level of flexibility, would be to make all of these nullable. And then NPC access equals NPC access, or if it's null, create default rule set. Now this isn't an instance method, so I have to go townsfolk manager dot create default rule set. Oh wait, wrong dependency, Rob. Return new SRD. Return new whatever it is. I can't remember. Rule set access. Oh wait, rule sets. Here we go. And rule set 5e SRD. SRD. Just like that. Not implicitly to rule set access, whatever. But you get the idea. We would have private statics that create the default implementations of the manager's dependencies, rather than rely on DI there. But that's not how I implemented things. I'm just going to get rid of that. Actually, I'm going to pop over here, and everything inside Townsfolk Manager, I'm going to undo those changes. Undo, yes. There we go. So yeah. Now, oh geez, I closed that too soon. Talking about capabilities and dependencies. So inside the Townsfolk Manager, one thing that we know any kind of RPG or game implementation is going to need is some sort of randomizer component, right? So I created this dice engine, and it's got a number of different randomization techniques in it. I've got a card deck simulator, I've got a dice bag, and a dice tray, and we've got math rock kinds, rolled math rocks, which represents the dice that are actually thrown into the tray. The tray is responsible for getting the sum of all of the dice that have been thrown into it, and then applying modifiers or adjustments, and so on. And then I've also got this card shuffler, Where are you? Deck simulator. All it does is take in a array of T, where T is some collection of class instances, looks at the length of that array, shuffles it, and then returns the top card. So out here in my townsfolk manager, when I need to pick a number between 1 and 20, or select one of a variable length list of species or backgrounds or what have you, instead of having the engine encapsulates the actual behavior that we want. So I could have implemented all of that stuff in here in the generate townsperson, or generate townsperson from options, or any of that stuff. But then I'd be writing the same code over and over and over again. So shuffler, pick one, and then I pass in the list of species that are in the currently used rule set. And the manager just kind of stitches all of the different capabilities together. So I've got, and this decomposition might be a little bit unripe, but it's okay. Townsfolk manager, there's this, filter townspeople. This accepts a townsperson filter object that we construct out in the UI. And all it does is really just passes it on to the resource access component. So my UI doesn't have to care about NPC access. It cares about calling the API, which is sort of like a BFF pattern. The BFF pattern stitches my townsfolk manager, my AI workload manager, my usage tracking manager. It stitches all of those things together to create the actual workflows that are invoked when we push a button in the Blazor application. But each of those managers encapsulates the specific functionality, or encapsulates the code that executes a particular use case. So like when we're doing an AI generation, first thing we do is we get the random attributes out of the townsfolk manager. And then we return and display those on screen. And if I'm happy with what's been rolled, then I can choose to hit the give me the AI description, and it calls out through the API and says, okay, AI description, I need to send this to the LLM. And then when it comes back, I need to record how many tokens were consumed and that the user used one of their AI generations for the month. And then take the AI information, the stuff that comes back from the language model, fold it into the townsperson object, and return that back to the client. And all of that stuff is done up in the what I'm calling the workload provider. It's really just an API that's tailored to the activities that are provided from the front end. Now, let's say I didn't have the AI stuff. I stripped it out completely. Then I could just do the generate and have it roll randomly, save it, and be done all through that townsfolk manager. I'd probably not call save from inside generate. I'd probably call save from the API component, But yeah, we have all of that flexibility. I could very easily import the dice engine into the workload provider, stand up a new API class in there, and use that as the backend for a dice tray screen in the UI. In fact, I found a really, really nice JavaScript and CSS based component that renders the die results as dice and all of that stuff. And if I do decide to throw like a dice loader or a dice roller dialog into this thing, I'll probably use that. It's MIT licensed. And then just instead of doing the random number generation in the browser, I'll broker that off to the server and then bring the result back. Reason being, if I'm going to be using it in a multi-user shared game experience, I want the dice to be run on the server, not in somebody's browser, because it'd be a really simple matter to just drop a breakpoint in the, oh, here's the result from the random number generator. I rolled 20s. Click. Oh, look, 20s. So, yeah. Online MMOs and stuff like that, all of the random rolls happen in the server processes because it's way too easy to intercept the call and alter what's fed up to the server when you're doing the random number generation in the client. So yeah, back to where we were. I hope that I said a lot of words and I kind of bounced all over the place conceptually, but really what Loewy's talking about is, as developers and system designers, we shouldn't be building applications by hard coding the features. We should be, as developers, creating sets of reusable Legos that we then snap together to provide those features that are requested. Is the way I have come to interpret his teachings and his writing on that stuff. And that there are only a couple valid reasons to there's only a couple of valid reasons where we would separate something out into a service. Either a component or a capability changes frequently, or a component or capability is used by multiple workloads. And if a component or capability is used by multiple workloads and changes frequently, we've got a problem with our design. Our components or services should only ever change, should only ever be shared or change often. If we run into a scenario where both of those statements are true, then we have to look at that component and see if there's some more decomposition that we can do there to separate things out so that our deployed services or our classes are either change often or hardly ever change but are shared widely. All right, so this is theoretically doing something. I haven't observed it yet. So let's see if on the create NPC page model, let's find some async tasks. On reroll clicked, on start over. Here we go. Here's one. Page state equals that. State is changed. Let's await loading overlay dot Set loading state true. Thinking. What are you complaining about? Oh, whatever. And then await, loading overlay, dot set loading state, false. Save it. And let's see if this does anything for us. And then I just noticed it's 10 after 11. Ever apply volatility-based decomposition to a system that isn't distributed? Yes, I'm using volatility-based decomposition in this system, and it's being deployed as what I call a well-factored monolith. I could separate out the LLM manager, the townsfolk manager, and its different data access components, the usage manager and its data access components, all into fine-grained, independently hosted services. But I don't feel like paying for a Kubernetes cluster on Azure. And I don't feel like paying the cognitive costs of having a highly fractured deployment like that yet. But because I've used these concepts, I can deploy as a single process, like as a monolith, and then watch the performance and watch the monitoring and metrics that I haven't added yet, but I will. And if I discover that some particular part of the system is causing performance issues or scaling issues or whatever, I can take that part, wrap it in its own ASP.NET API system, host that as a separate process, set up automatic scaling rules and all of that stuff on it. And it's going to be a matter of creating a HTTP proxy and moving that project reference into its own solution rather than rewriting a whole bunch of stuff from scratch. Okay, so here's loading NPC list. So that's good. It does seem to be working, and through all of my jibber jabber, it looks like my database went back to sleep. So thank you for asking these questions. It's letting me get a decent test of this thing, and this is gonna fail because when the database goes to sleep, it tends to really take a hard nap, and I gotta figuratively speaking, pour coffee over its head and all of that stuff. But there's that loading NPC list, and that's good. That's very good. So we know that this is working, and there it goes. We're back. Beautiful. So that's exactly what I wanted to see happen. So I'm going to create gnome, she, hers, they, them, halfling, retired guard. Yeah, sure. And let's generate the AI description. And this loading overlay is null for some goofy reason. What are you complaining about? Object reference not set to an instance of an object. That's really, really, really goofy. Oh, I bet I know why. Maybe. No, I added that. That's so goofy. All right. So we're still running into issues where that cascading parameter is null sometimes. We're going to pick up on this afternoon. I have some things to do here. I need to do some grooming and so on because I do actually have a job interview this afternoon at 3. And I don't want to look like I have been a grumpy old troll living under a bridge and hassling the three billy goats gruff every time they go by. So I'm gonna go do some take care of the machine, and I'll be back at 1, and we'll pick up where we're leaving off right here. We're gonna figure out why this content loading component is null sometimes and not others. So Erkamus, thanks for hanging out, man. I really appreciate your questions. They really spur some interesting conversations and give me an excuse to kind of uh, talk about how software happens. And I will see you again this afternoon, hopefully. And everybody else, be good to yourselves. Happy coding. Take care.